The morning sun glinted off the glass conference room as Edison slid the tablet across the table. On screen, a grainy image of me entering the Halcyon building last Thursday evening. Not exactly damning evidence, but enough for what they'd already decided to do. "We've received concerning reports about your after-hours activities," Edison said, voice neutral but eyes cold. "Our employment agreement explicitly prohibits working for another company while employed here." Beside him, Finn's lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of betrayal, Aria." I felt nothing. Not fear, not anger, not even surprise. Just a strange lightness, as if gravity had loosened its hold on me. "You're terminated, effective immediately," Edison continued. He pushed a termination letter toward me. "Security will escort you to collect your things." I didn't argue, didn't try to explain. I simply nodded and said, "You're right. I should focus on one position." Their expressions flickered, confusion crossing their features before settling back into professional neutrality. They had expected tears, pleading, maybe anger. Not this calm acceptance. What they couldn't see was the weight lifting from my shoulders as I placed my access badge on the table. 3 years of constant anxiety, of carrying an entire company's digital safety alone, evaporating in an instant. Finn cleared his throat, uncomfortable with my composure. "We'll need all passwords and access credentials before you leave." I smiled. "Everything's documented in the system knowledge base, just as protocol requires." Another lie. The documentation existed, but it was like giving someone a map without a compass, technically complete but practically useless without my contextual knowledge. As security walked me to my desk, colleagues stared, whispered. I packed my few personal items, a ceramic mug, a small plant that had somehow survived 3 years of neglectful watering, a notebook full of system architectures only I truly understood. Arlo, our VP of technology, watched from his glass-walled office, expression unreadable. He made no move to intervene, though he knew better than anyone what would happen next. When the security guard escorted me through the lobby, spring air hit my face. I breathed deeply for what felt like the first time in years. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a message from Vega. "Still on for 2 p.m.? I typed back, "Yes, and now I can accept your full-time offer." 3 years of building someone else's empire was enough. 3 years of being the invisible infrastructure that kept everything running while others took the credit. 3 years of warnings ignored, requests denied, promotions passed over. Now it was over, and the countdown had begun. I know you're probably wondering how this story ends. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. If you're enjoying this corporate revenge tale, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment with your thoughts so far. Now, let me tell you how I ended up in this situation. My name is Aria Wesley, and until 40 minutes ago, I was the lead network security architect at a Fortune 500 tech company. The only one, in fact. Not by design. There were supposed to be 5 of us. Budget cuts shrunk that to 3, then resignations to 1. Just me. I never set out to become indispensable. That's a dangerous position in corporate America. But with each passing quarter, as my team evaporated and my responsibilities multiplied, I found myself as the sole guardian of a digital kingdom worth billions. It started 3 years ago when I was recruited from a smaller firm. I still remember Arlo's promises during my interview. "We're building a world-class security team," he'd said, eyes bright with genuine enthusiasm. "You'll lead a specialized group focusing on our proprietary systems." The salary wasn't spectacular, but the challenge was irresistible. Building security architecture for cutting-edge technology, working with brilliant minds, I signed immediately. Reality arrived by month 3. The first round of strategic restructuring eliminated 2 senior positions on my team. By month 6, another colleague left for better pay elsewhere. His replacement lasted 4 months before budget freezes, eliminated the position entirely. "Temporary situation," Arlo assured me. "We'll staff up next quarter." Next quarter became next year. Next year became let's reassess after the merger. The merger came and went. Still, just me. Meanwhile, the systems grew more complex. Our client base tripled. The attack vectors multiplied. I built increasingly sophisticated protection measures, working nights, weekends, holidays to keep pace with emerging threats. When I warned about critical vulnerabilities, my emails were acknowledged, but action items mysteriously disappeared from meeting minutes. When I requested additional staff, I was told to prioritize better. When I asked for compensation that matched my expanding responsibilities, I received praise instead of dollars. "You're our rock star," Arlo would say, clapping my shoulder. "Nobody understands these systems like you do." That was the problem. Nobody did understand them. Nobody wanted to understand them. I offered to train others, to document the increasingly Byzantine architecture that had evolved under pressure. The offers were met with nods, smiles, and zero follow-through. Last winter, I prevented a breach that would have exposed millions of client records. Working 72 hours straight, barely sleeping, I identified the intrusion pattern and built a new defense layer in real time. When the crisis passed, I received a $500 gift card and a mention in the company newsletter. The CEO, who took credit for our robust security culture, received a 7-figure bonus. That was when I realized what I had become, not invaluable, but invisible. The infrastructure nobody sees until it fails. I tried one last time, scheduling a meeting with Arlo and the executive team. "Our current security staffing is unsustainable," I explained, showing charts, data, industry comparisons. "We need at least 3 more specialists to maintain this architecture properly." Arlo nodded sympathetically. "After Q4 results," he promised, "we're just in a temporary holding pattern." I'd heard that line for 3 years. Without proper staffing, this system requires continuous maintenance from someone who understands its entirety, I warned. "If I were hit by a bus tomorrow, you'd have serious problems within days, catastrophic ones within weeks." The CFO frowned. "Sounds like we need better documentation, not more headcount." I felt something break inside me. I've submitted comprehensive documentation requests for 18 months. They've been deprioritized every quarter. Uncomfortable silence followed. Then, redirection, postponement, vague promises. I left that meeting knowing nothing would change. And I needed change. My health was deteriorating. My relationships strained by constant work emergencies. Something had to give. Then came the cybersecurity conference in Boston. I wasn't supposed to attend. Travel budgets were frozen, but the organizer was an old college friend who got me a speaking slot on adaptive threat response architectures. The company couldn't refuse the free publicity. That's where I met Vega, head of security for our largest competitor. She caught me after my presentation, impressed by the theoretical framework I'd outlined. "The implementation must be fascinating," she said, eyes bright with genuine interest. "I'd love to hear more about how you've actualized these concepts." We talked for hours, carefully avoiding specifics about our employers. Just 2 professionals discussing theoretical approaches, architecture philosophies, the first real professional conversation I'd had in years. As the conference ended, Vega handed me her card. "We could use your perspective on our new security framework. Strictly advisory, weekends only, nothing operational, nothing that would create conflicts." The consulting fee she mentioned exceeded my monthly salary, for weekend work, for being valued. I hesitated only briefly before accepting. The work was advisory only, reviewing their proposed systems, not touching their actual infrastructure. Nothing that violated confidentiality. Nothing operational that impacted either company. For 8 weeks, I lived a double life. Weekdays maintaining the digital fortress that protected billions in assets, unrecognized and undervalued. Weekends being respected, heard, and compensated appropriately for my expertise. Then last Thursday, I parked 2 blocks from Vega's office building for our regular meeting. Someone recognized my car, someone made assumptions, someone decided I was dispensable, what they failed to understand. Their entire security infrastructure required specialized weekly adjustments that only I knew how to perform. Adjustments I'd tried to teach others, but nobody had time to learn. Adjustments that prevented the exact cascade of system failures I'd warned about repeatedly. As the security guard escorted me from the building, my phone lit up with a message from Vega. "Advisory board approved full-time offer. Chief security architect. Triple your current salary. Team of 8. When can you start?" I looked back at the gleaming tower where I'd given 3 years of my life. The security guard avoided my eyes, uncomfortable with his assignment. "Is it worth it?" I asked him quietly. "Working for people who discard you this easily?" He had no answer, just a practiced neutral expression. But I saw the flash of recognition in his eyes. He understood exactly what I was asking. I texted Vega back, "I can start Monday." What my former employers didn't realize as they rushed me out. In precisely 72 hours, During end-of-quarter processing, when their data traffic peaked, their entire system would require the specialized maintenance only I performed. The maintenance I'd been begging them to let me train others to do. Not sabotage, not revenge, just the natural consequence of ignoring warnings, of valuing systems over the people who built them. As I drove away, my phone began to ring. Arlo's number. I smiled and turned off the ringer. The clock was ticking. By Friday afternoon, I had signed Vega's employment contract. Chief security architect with a team of 8 specialists, triple my previous salary and equity options. The relief was physical, like putting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what normal felt like. I spent the weekend preparing for my new role, sleeping more deeply than I had in years. No emergency alerts waking me at 3 a.m. No expectations of immediate response, just silence and rest. Monday morning, I arrived at Halcyon headquarters dressed in a new suit. The lobby's soaring ceilings and natural light were designed to impress, but it was the respect that struck me most. "We're thrilled you're joining us, Aria," Vega said, giving me a proper orientation tour. "Let me introduce you to your team." Team. The word sounded foreign after years of solitary responsibility. 8 security specialists, each with defined roles that complemented one another. They looked at me with curiosity, not the desperate relief I'd grown accustomed to when appearing to solve the latest crisis. "We've heard incredible things about your adaptive security approach," said Ellis, a threat analysis specialist with bright eyes and quick hands. "Looking forward to learning from you." By lunchtime, we were deep in animated discussion about their current architecture. They had questions, thoughtful ones. They challenged my assumptions, offered alternatives, built upon my ideas, rather than simply implementing them. This was what collaboration felt like. I'd almost forgotten. Meanwhile, across town, the first warning signs were appearing at my former workplace. I didn't need spies to tell me. The system's rhythms were as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. Monday afternoon would bring the first authentication bottlenecks as the weekly credential refresh cycle tried to execute without the manual override I always performed. By Tuesday morning, log files would begin to overflow, slowing response times. By Wednesday afternoon, exactly 72 hours after my departure, the cascading failures would begin during end-of-quarter processing peak. I felt a twinge of guilt, not for what would happen, I had warned them repeatedly, but for the innocent employees who would suffer alongside those who had made the decisions. My phone buzzed at 4:52 p.m. Monday. "Arlo." I let it go to voicemail. "Aria, it's Arlo. Look, there seems to be some issue with the authentication servers. Probably just a configuration thing. Call me when you get this. Thanks." His voice was casual, just a small technical hiccup. I deleted the message. Tuesday morning brought 3 more calls from increasingly senior people. By afternoon, the tone had changed dramatically. "This is Maeve from the executive office. Our systems are experiencing significant slowdowns. The technical team has been unable to resolve the issue. The CEO has authorized me to discuss terms for your return as a consultant to address these urgent matters." I texted back a single line. "I'm focusing on one position now, as suggested." At Halcyon, I was immersed in building something new rather than desperately maintaining something old. My team and I mapped out a security architecture that incorporated the best elements of my theoretical models with their existing infrastructure. Vega checked in regularly but never hovered. "How are you settling in?" "It's strange," I admitted. "Having resources, being heard." She nodded. "We've all worked at places that didn't value expertise. That's why our retention rate is triple the industry average." Late Tuesday night, my personal email chimed. From Arlo, marked urgent. "Critical system failure imminent. Name your consulting rate. Please respond immediately." I closed the laptop without replying. Wednesday dawned bright and clear. At my morning team meeting, we finalized our implementation plan for the new security architecture. The energy was electric. 8 brilliant minds building something together, each contribution acknowledged and valued. My phone began vibrating continuously around 2 p.m. I silenced it during our planning session. When I checked later, I had 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. One from Edison in HR. "Legal has reviewed your termination. We may have acted hastily. Please call urgently." Another from Finn. "Whatever they're paying you, we'll double it. This is critical." From the CEO himself. "National clients losing access to accounts. regulatory implications, board meeting in progress, call immediately. I felt no satisfaction, just a hollow confirmation of everything I had warned them about. They had built a kingdom on my shoulders, then pushed me away without understanding what would collapse. That evening, as I drove home from my new office, a breaking news alert flashed across my dashboard display. Major service outage reported at leading financial technology provider. Thousands of client accounts inaccessible. No company name yet, but I knew. The mainstream exposure would come tomorrow when clients couldn't access their quarterly reports, when regulators started asking questions, when the stock began to plummet. At home, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving and sat on my balcony, watching the sunset. My phone lit up again, Arlo's number. This time, I answered. Aria. His voice was ragged with exhaustion. Everything's failing. Sequential authentication breakdowns, cascading into the transaction processing layer. Nobody can stop it. I warned you, I said quietly. For 3 years, I warned you. I know. The admission sounded physically painful. Tell me what to do. Any price. I took a slow sip of wine. It's not about price anymore, Arlo. It's about value. We valued you. No, I interrupted. You valued what I produced. Not enough to listen when I told you it was unsustainable. Not enough to staff properly. Not enough to compensate fairly. Not enough to credit honestly. Silence stretched between us. You know what would have prevented this? I continued. Any one person besides me understanding how these systems actually work. Anyone taking 5 minutes to read the warnings I documented in every quarterly review. Anyone listening when I said this exact scenario would happen if I ever left. His breathing was the only response. The recovery procedure exists, I said finally. It's in the disaster documentation I submitted last year. The documentation that was deprioritized because you're handling everything so well, Aria. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Thursday morning, I arrived at Halcyon to find Vega waiting in the lobby. Have you seen the news? She asked, holding out her tablet. The headline was stark. Major tech failure erases billions in market value. Beneath it, a photo of my former company's headquarters. Their entire client database is locked, Vega said. Transaction processing down for 16 hours and counting. The stock has dropped 40% since opening. I felt strangely empty looking at the numbers. This wasn't satisfaction. This was waste. Of talent, trust, potential, caused by short-sighted decisions made by people who wouldn't suffer the worst consequences. They've been calling our executive office, Vega continued, trying to reach you through us. For emergency support? No. Vega's expression was grim. They're threatening legal action, claiming you sabotaged their systems before leaving. My stomach dropped. I didn't. We know, she interrupted. Our legal team has already reviewed your contract and exit procedures. You're clean, but they're desperate and looking for someone to blame. As we walked to my new office, the weight I'd shed began to return. Not from guilt, I had done nothing wrong, but from the recognition that even now, they refused to accept responsibility. My team was waiting, concerned faces tracking my entrance. Is it true? Ellis asked. About your former employer? I nodded. Did you really build their entire security infrastructure yourself? Another team member asked. Not by choice, I said. By necessity. Understanding passed between us. The silent recognition of a shared experience. Every person in that room had, at some point, been the unacknowledged foundation others stood upon. Well, Ellis said finally, their disaster is educational for us. Let's make sure our systems never depend on any single person, including you, Aria. The simple wisdom of this statement nearly brought tears to my eyes. This was leadership, acknowledging expertise while preventing unhealthy dependency. We returned to our work, designing resilience into every layer of the new architecture. But as morning turned to afternoon, the news grew worse for my former employer. Regulators had launched an investigation. Client defections were accelerating. The stock had dropped another 15%. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, displayed 57 missed calls. The last one came from an unknown number. The voicemail was from the board chair himself. Miss Wesley, this is Terrence Walsh. The situation has become untenable. The board has removed several executives this morning, including Mr. Edison and Mr. Finn. We recognize the systemic failures that led to your departure. Please call me directly to discuss how we might move forward. I sat with this message for a long time, cursor hovering over the delete button. Part of me wanted to let them continue paying the full price of their decisions. Another part recognized that innocent people, regular employees, clients, were suffering for leadership's failures. At our afternoon meeting, Vega pulled me aside. Their CTO reached out directly. Apparently, the board fired half the executive team this morning. I heard, I said. They're offering an astronomical consulting fee for emergency recovery assistance. 1 day of your time, remotely. No ongoing commitment. I hesitated. What do you think? Vega considered carefully. Professionally, helping them doesn't harm us. Their reputation is already damaged beyond quick repair. Personally, it's your call. You don't owe them anything. As I walked back to my office, Ellis fell into step beside me. You know, they said casually, sometimes the most powerful message isn't letting someone fail completely. It's showing them exactly what they lost by letting them see you succeed elsewhere. I stopped walking. What do you mean? Ellis shrugged. If you help them recover, they'll always know 2 things. That you could have prevented their disaster, and that you were gracious enough to help them despite how they treated you. That kind of knowledge changes organizations more than bankruptcy. I considered this perspective as I returned to my desk, where my team was already implementing the security architecture we'd designed together. My finger hovered over Terrence Walsh's number. What would truly constitute revenge in this situation? Letting their systems remain broken? Their company possibly collapse? Or showing them exactly what they had discarded? The answer came as I watched my new team working together, each person's contribution acknowledged, each voice heard. I pressed the call button. Miss Wesley, Terrence Walsh's voice carried the strained politeness of someone unused to making requests. Thank you for returning my call. Mr. Walsh, I kept my tone neutral. I understand your company is experiencing technical difficulties. A careful understatement. Based on industry reports flooding in, they were facing a complete system collapse. Client data inaccessible, trading platforms frozen, regulatory violations mounting by the hour. Difficulties would be an understatement, Walsh admitted. Our entire infrastructure has become essentially non-functional. The team cannot resolve the cascading authentication failures. I let silence fill the line, making him continue. The board has reviewed your employment history and recent termination. It appears serious mistakes were made regarding your warnings and staffing requests. Yes, I said simply. They were. More silence. In the background, I could hear raised voices, the chaos of a company in freefall. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for your assistance in resolving this crisis. Name your figure. I had considered this moment during my sleepless nights at my former employer. Imagined the satisfaction of rejecting their desperate pleas. But Ellis's words echoed. Sometimes the most powerful message isn't letting someone fail completely. My consulting rate is $50,000 per hour, I said, naming a figure that would have seemed absurd a week ago. 4-hour minimum engagement, payment in advance to my specified account, and I have conditions beyond compensation. Walsh didn't hesitate. Done. What conditions? First, I work remotely. I don't set foot in your building. Understood. Second, I provide instructions only. Your team implements. I won't directly access your systems. That's challenging, but acceptable. Third, I receive a public letter of apology, acknowledging that I warned about these vulnerabilities repeatedly and was ignored. Walsh paused. The legal implications are less severe than bankruptcy, I finished. Fourth, every member of my former team who was laid off receives 6 months severance and positive references. The board would need to. Fifth, I continued. You create and fully fund the security team structure I originally proposed, with market rate salaries and proper management support. Silence stretched between us. These aren't just demands for my benefit, Mr. Walsh, I explained. Without these structural changes, you'll be right back here in 6 months when the next person burns out or leaves. I heard papers shuffling, muffled voices as he conferred with others. We agree to your terms, he finally said. How soon can you begin? Transfer the payment, send written confirmation of all conditions, and I'll start this afternoon. After ending the call, I sat motionless, letting the reality settle around me. Not revenge as I had imagined it, but something more profound. Accountability, change, recognition. Vega knocked on my open door. How did it go? I explained the agreement. She nodded approvingly. Using their crisis to force structural change. Impressive. It's not just about making them pay. I said. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to the next person. Exactly why we wanted you here, she replied with a smile. This approach to their crisis actually aligns perfectly with our next phase. The board has approved our proposal to launch a security consulting division. I looked up, surprised. We've received 17 inquiries since news of their failure broke, Vega continued. Companies terrified they might have the same vulnerabilities. Who better to lead that division than someone who just proved how essential proper security architecture is? The pieces clicked into place. My experience wasn't just valuable here, it was transformative, not just for me, but potentially for an entire industry that consistently undervalued the invisible infrastructure keeping it alive. I'd like you to present the concept at next week's leadership meeting, she added, with a proposed structure and staffing plan. After Vega left, I opened my laptop to prepare for the emergency consultation. Within minutes, my inbox pinged with the payment confirmation and a signed letter agreeing to all my conditions. I sent detailed recovery instructions to my former company's technical team, step-by-step procedures to resolve the authentication cascade failure. Instructions I had actually documented months ago, but that had been buried in unread reports. As expected, questions flooded back immediately. The team trying to implement my instructions lacked contextual understanding of the systems they were attempting to save. For 4 hours, I guided them through the recovery, explaining not just what to do, but why each step mattered, teaching what should have been taught long ago. Midway through, Arlo joined the video call, eyes hollowed from sleepless nights. Aria, he began. I want to. This isn't the time, I interrupted. Let's focus on recovery. By evening, their systems were stabilizing. Authentication flows restored, transaction processing resuming. Too late to prevent significant damage to their reputation and stock price, but soon enough to avoid complete collapse. As our session ended, I delivered one final message to the assembled team. Every system you're working with has documented maintenance procedures and vulnerabilities I identified. Those documents exist in the folders that were deemed low priority for review. Read them, learn them, because building resilience isn't about technology. It's about people understanding what they're responsible for. I closed the laptop and looked out my office window at the sunset painting the city gold. My phone buzzed with a text from Ellis. Teams heading out for drinks to celebrate the new architecture approval. You coming? For the first time in years, I had no alerts to monitor, no systems that would implode without my constant attention. I had colleagues, not dependents, boundaries, not endless obligation. On my way, I replied. 1 month later, I stood in Halcyon's largest conference room, presenting our new security consulting division to the executive team. Behind me, slides displayed the market opportunity created by my former employer's very public failure and our unique positioning to address it. Every company believes their technical systems are secure until proven otherwise, I explained. Our approach isn't just providing better technology, it's changing how organizations value and structure their security operations. The approval was unanimous. Within days, we began hiring, expanding my team to 20 specialists with diverse expertise. Our first clients were already lined up, companies terrified of suffering the same fate as my former employer. That afternoon, I received an unexpected email with the subject line, "Thank you," from Terrence Walsh. Miss Wesley, I wanted to personally update you on the changes implemented since your consultation. We've hired the full security team structure you recommended, including a chief security officer reporting directly to the board. Your public letter of acknowledgement ran in today's business section. Most importantly, we've instituted a complete review of all deprioritized documentation from technical staff across the organization, already uncovering critical insights that had been ignored. The cost of these lessons has been steep. Our market value remains 30% below pre-incident levels, and client trust will take years to rebuild. But the cultural change within the organization has been profound. Your impact extends far beyond the technical recovery you guided. If you're ever interested in returning, my door remains open. I closed the email without replying. There was nothing to say. My answer was already visible in industry announcements about Halcyon's new consulting division and my role leading it. 3 months after my termination, I took the stage at the same cybersecurity conference where I'd met Vega. This time, I wasn't speaking as a lone architect, but as the division head of a growing team, presenting our framework for organizational security resilience. In the audience sat former colleagues, including Arlo and the new CSO they'd finally hired. Their expressions as I detailed our client growth, including 5 companies who had transferred their business from my former employer to Halcyon, told me everything. They understood, finally, that what they had lost wasn't just my technical knowledge. They had lost the future I was now building elsewhere. After my presentation, attendees swarmed with questions and business cards. Among them was the new CSO, who waited until others had dispersed. "Your replacement system is impressive," I acknowledged, noting the positive industry reviews their rebuilt security architecture had received. "Built on your foundation," she admitted. "Your documentation was extraordinary once anyone actually read it. You saved them even while leaving." I smiled. "Some lessons can only be learned through consequences." As I gathered my materials, she added, "You know they track your success obsessively now. Every announcement, every client acquisition, measuring what could have been theirs. And there it was, the true revenge. Not their failure, but my success. Not their loss, but my gain. Every achievement at Halcyon was a reminder of what they had discarded. Every innovation my team produced reflected what they could have had if they had listened, valued, supported. The most devastating consequence wasn't the system failure or financial loss. It was watching me build elsewhere what they had prevented me from building with them. 6 months to the day after my termination, Halcyon announced our security consulting division had become the fastest-growing segment of the company, with a client list that included 3 Fortune 100 corporations. The press release featured my name prominently, alongside quotes from clients about our revolutionary approach to organizational security architecture. That evening, Ellis organized a team celebration. 20 brilliant specialists, none overworked, none undervalued, each contributing their unique expertise to something larger than themselves. As we raised glasses, Ellis offered a toast to Aria, who showed us all that the best expertise isn't about knowing everything yourself, it's about building teams where everyone's knowledge is heard. Looking around at these faces, engaged, respected, collaborative, I realized this was the real victory. Not watching my former employer struggle, but creating an environment where talent could thrive, where warnings were heeded, where expertise was valued, where no single person carried an impossible burden. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't making others fail. It's succeeding so visibly that they must forever live with the knowledge of what they lost. And sometimes the greatest revenge of all is simply building the life and career you deserve elsewhere. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. We've all experienced being undervalued or overlooked at some point. Maybe you're carrying an entire department on your shoulders right now, wondering if anyone notices. Remember, your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. The right environment is out there, one that values not just what you produce, but who you are. Drop a comment sharing your own workplace experience or how you found your professional home. Your story matters too.